one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment. Did you capture it? Just let it slip. Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, plow. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes rabbit. He choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he know he won't have it. He knows his whole back's to these ropes. It don't matter. He's dope. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so stagnant. He knows when he goes back to this mobile home. That's when it's back to the lab again, yo. This old rhapsody better go capture this moment and hope it don't. You better lose yourself in the music. The moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. You better lose yourself in the music. The moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. You better. Souls escaping through this hole that is gaping. This world is mine for the taking. Make me king as we move toward a new world order. A normal life is boring, but superstardom's close to postmortem. It only grows harder. Homie grows hotter. He blows. It's all over. These hoes is all on him. Coast to coast shows. He's known as the Globetrotter. Lonely roads. God only knows he's grown farther from home. He's no father. He goes home and barely knows his own daughter. But hold your nose, cause here goes the cold water. These hoes don't want him no more. He's cold product. They moved on to the next mo who flows. He knows dove and sold nada. And so the soap opera is told. It unfolds. I suppose it's old partner, but the beat goes on.
Yes, the beat goes on. Welcome back to Prophet Time. Wayne Vose, your host here. Glad to be here. Glad you're here most of all. And, you know, we're going to have a great show today planned. You know, it's Monday. We're back in the saddle again. You are. Hope everything started out good for your Monday morning. You know, hey, I get it. It's Monday. Sometimes Mondays can be a challenge, but heck, Tuesdays can be a challenge. Wednesdays can be a challenge. Any day can be a challenge. We just got to make the best of it. You know, hope everybody showed up to work this morning for you. For you guys that are just now getting going on the West Coast and on Mountain Time and Pacific Time, hope everybody shows up and you get out and hump day on it. You know, not hump day Wednesday, but, you know, hump it all day. Hope you get to have a great day today and everybody shows up, get the work going. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. And we've got a great show planned for sure today. You know, I always try to think I got a great show planned for everybody. You know, I try to talk about things that would interest me as a commercial contractor. And sometimes I'll talk about things that wouldn't interest me as a commercial contractor because, you know, we're not all the same. You know, we're not all the same. You know, just because I think it's interesting, you might think, man, that's the dumbest thing in the world. Wonder why he's talking about that. So a lot of times, you know, I think outside the box too, that just because I think it's good, I may pass on that and not talk about that and think about, wait, maybe they want to hear something about this. So maybe you want to hear this. So if ever you got any ideas on what you'd like me to talk about on Prophet Time, let me know. Feel free to reach out. Certainly, we're going to have a lot of different topics today that I think it's a diverse enough group of topics that I think you're going to have some interaction. Feel free to text me. You can reach me at 502-550-8307. That's 502-550-8307. If you'd like to shoot me a text about what we're talking about or something you'd like to hear about, feel free to do that because, you know, this show is only as good as you. You know, you got to like it. And the only way you're going to like it is if we're talking about what you want to hear. So let's do that. Let's talk about what you want to hear about. So feel free to text me, and we certainly can do that. So anyway, as we move along, let's talk a little bit about our weekends, man. Had a crazy weekend. Didn't do anything too crazy, too much fun. But I did have some experiences over the weekend that I'm going to share with you. One was a sales experience that we'll talk about. But before we get into that, just want to find out, what you did fun this weekend. Shoot me a text. Let me know. 502-550-8307. Let me know what you did this weekend. If you had hurricane rain affected a lot of us in the southeast and, down in the southern part of the country, but we had great weather in other parts of the country. Maybe you were out, finishing up your fall aerations and seedings, depending on where you're at. So get involved. If you like what you hear on Profit Time, know that you can go to your favorite place where you like to download your podcast and download our show. You can hear any of our shows. So with that, I got a fun fact of the day. And I got to thinking about this the other day when I was talking with a gentleman in Colorado, actually. And, he said, Wayne, quickly, just give me a fun fact. Give me a fun fact. And I said, all right, here's the fun fact of the day. And it just popped in my head because this is something that cost me and my company literally thousands of dollars. Literally cost us thousands of dollars. And the neat thing about this fun fact, you ready for this? It's simple to change, and it doesn't cost you anything to change. It's simple and it doesn't cost you anything. It almost sounds like a lie, doesn't it? But the reality of it is this. This is the fun fact of the day, and maybe you're already doing it. But if you're not, it certainly is something to consider. And that's this. When is the best time for you to get fuel? When's the best time for you to get fuel? And regardless of how small or how large your company is, most of us in the industry, our first stop of the morning is where? If we don't have fuel on site, where's our first stop of the morning? That's exactly right. That first stop is generally a gas station or Thornton's or Speedway or whatever, 7-Eleven, whatever it is, wherever you're getting fuel, a lot of times that's our first stop in the morning. It's bad enough that you got the downtime of load and unload your trailer if you don't have a shop where you leave things loaded. So you got that time in the morning to deal with. But now immediately you go get fuel. Have you ever thought about what it costs you to simply get fuel? And you say, well, Wayne, man, what's the difference, man? I need fuel. Well, I'm going to just create a little illustration here that I think is very realistic for your company. Let's just say you're a one-truck operation. It's just you and a helper. Just you and a helper. That's it. And know that the math on this just gets exponentially greater as you add people and you add trucks, okay? But let's just, for the sake of keeping this simple, say it's just you and a helper. We started tracking many years ago our fuel stops in the morning. Just where everything, but fuel stops was part of it. And that is the absolute worst time to stop. Why? Why is it the worst time of the day to stop and get fuel? I know you're talking to yourself right now and you're saying, well, man, it's because everybody's in there getting fuel, or everybody's in there getting a breakfast sandwich, or everybody's. All right. So you know the answer to it. So then that leads me to the next question. Why are you doing it day after day after day after day? When we started looking at it from a management standpoint, And again, I'm going to look at it right now from a one truck standpoint. Our morning fuel stops were anywhere between 14 and 20 minutes because you had to get fuel, obviously, and then somebody had to go in and either use the restroom or get some donuts or get a Gatorade or get this or get that. And then when they got inside, what was inside waiting for them was the line of everybody else. And the minutes just kept accumulating over and over and over and over and over. So let's just look at it for a second and say it's just you and a helper, and it takes you 18 minutes in the morning from the time you pull up till you stop, you fuel up, you mix, you're doing what you're doing, you walk inside to get you a drink to take with you and maybe a little snack, whatever. I'm not saying you got to use these numbers I'm using. What I want you to do is start tracking your own numbers. Because like I say all the time with Profits Unlimited, when I'm talking to companies consulting-wise or in a seminar or however it is, don't base anything on my numbers because my numbers aren't important. Your numbers are important. So you track your numbers. You see how long, and don't cheat the system either. You got to do me a favor now. Don't cheat the system. Tomorrow morning or this morning when you get fuel, don't say, hey, man, we got to hurry up and get out of here because Wayne was talking about that on Profit Time. And, man, we got to see how quick we can get in and out of here. Make it a normal stop, whatever normal is for you. It's different for every one of us. But track the time of the stop. In the example I'm going to give, I'm going to say it's an 18-minute stop. So you got two people, you and a helper, that stops for 18 minutes. That's 36 minutes. Right? You take that 36 minutes times the number of days you're mowing. Let's just say 5. Keep it simple, right? That works out to about 3 labor hours a week. Now you insert your rate per hour that you want to achieve, whether it's $50 an hour or $1,000 an hour, I don't care. You insert what you want your hourly rate to be. In this scenario, I'm going to keep it fair. I'm going to say a guy wants to make at least $75 an hour, $75 an hour labor rate. I think that's more than fair. So if we got 3 times 75, it's $225 a week just in getting fuel. Now, let's just say you're in a market. Now, again, fill in your numbers because that's your numbers matter, not mine. So I'm using an example of a 30-week season. So if you've got a 30-week season at $225 a week, that's about $6,750 that it's costing you in time that you're not getting back. Now, you might be thinking, Wayne, yeah, but I got to get fuel at some point. I got to be getting fuel at some point. I can't just run these machines on air. I get that. But here's what I want you to try. Try getting fuel in the afternoon. Track your time in the morning and track it for a week. Don't do it one day because, different things happen different mornings. And see how much time you had getting fuel in the morning. And then start getting your fuel in the afternoon and see what happens. Because what I think you're going to see is regardless of what your morning stop was, your afternoon time is going to be about half of that. Now, some of that might be, there's a lot of different reasons why it's half of that, right? Maybe you're a little more motivated to get finished, to get home, to get back, but most importantly, maybe there's less people there getting fuel in the afternoon in most cases than there is in the morning. So if you cut that number in half, instead of it costing you $6,750 to get fuel over a 30-week cycle, it's costing you $3,375. It's costing you half of that. Because those are labor hours that you're not going to get back. And they are labor hours that need to be paid. Although I know this is a different topic for a different day. We get very creative on when we tell somebody they're on the clock and when they're off the clock. But the reality of it is, you can save yourself, in this example, $3,375 a year by doing nothing other than simply changing the time of day that you get fuel. That is your fun fact of the day. Track your time in the afternoon. Track your time in the morning. See what works better for you. But I think you're going to find out that getting fuel in the morning costs you a lot more money than it does getting fuel in the afternoon. We'll be right back. Your turf time is 10:17 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is your industry, your station, Turf's Up Radio.
Playing the best music.
Hands down and dirty. Turf's Up Radio.
Turf's Up Radio. Turf's Up Radio.
Turf's Up Radio. Turf's Up Radio. Turf's Up.
Turf's Up Radio. Your industry, your station.
Are you a military family with a spouse on deployment away from home? Did you know that nonprofit Project Evergreen has thousands of volunteers across the country ready to help military families with lawn, landscape, and snow removal services? We call it Green Care and Snow Care for troops. If you are a military family and would like to receive this free service, or if you'd like to volunteer to help, visit projectevergreen.org. Project Evergreen, creating a greener, healthier, cooler Earth, 1 yard at a time.
Turn existing irrigation systems into organic fertilizing, safe pest repelling machines with the Pro Products Green Feeder System. Irrigation contractors are leaving less money on the table and increasing profits with this easy to install, easy to maintain, unlimited recurring revenue opportunity. Call 800-285-9176, 800-285-9176, and mention Turf's Up Radio for an exclusive offer, or visit ProProducts.com to learn more.
Hey, Green Industry Pros, are you new to Turf's Up Radio and want to learn more? Then plug in your earphones and keep listening, because Turf's Up Radio invites you to listen while you work. Our 24/7 live radio platform keeps you up to date, bringing you new tips and interviews from pros like you who want to elevate and educate the green industry. Can't make it to industry shows or events? Don't worry. Turf's Up Radio will be there bringing you live coverage, getting you in on the action. So keep listening to Turf's Up Radio. Your industry, your station.
You know, it's the little things sometimes that we don't look at within our companies that are just profit killers. And, you know, that's I got a whole segment. We'll talk about profit killers at a later date. But, you know, getting fuel is one that's easily overlooked that, man, like I said, even as seriously as a one-truck operation, the thousands of dollars that can save you just by changing something simple like, hey, man, when you getting fuel? So that's the challenge of the day. That's the challenge of the day. I want you to take a look at that and ask yourself if that makes sense or not. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I think you're going to find it makes pretty daggone good sense. You know, got a quick story I want to share with you all. And, and this happened to me over the weekend. You know, last week I shared with you guys that I had a little fire in my oven. I think it was Wednesday of last week. Wasn't a big deal, but, we had a little fire in the oven. So, okay, good deal. We had two choices, replace the element or replace the range. So my wife said, these things, they're about 16, 18 years old. We probably ought to just go ahead and replace the range. And we're like, okay, cool, man. Let's do it. That's my wife. That's Jane's forte is, hey, she never asked for a whole lot. It's you guys know where I'm going with that. We'll leave it at that. Let's just stay. If that's what she wants, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep it that simple. So anyway, we go out the following evening and we're looking for a range. And I know you guys are thinking, what in the world does this have to do with green industry? And I'll get to the point in a minute. But this foundation really is important. So we're looking for a range, and I don't know if any of you guys you've been looking for any type of appliances recently, but it's not the easiest find in the world. So anyways, we find a range, and while we're there, Jane decided that, hey, let's go ahead and get a microwave, because a few years ago we had a power surge through the house that damaged our microwave some. So, okay, it's time to get a microwave since we're getting a range. So we find a place, we get it ordered. They tell us it's going to be toward the end of October. Okay, great. So we went ahead and paid for it, and we're looking toward the end of October to get our new range, because you can still use the stovetop and we could still use our microwave, so it wasn't no big rush. So anyway, we're happy. She's happy. We're happy. We're all happy, right? So Saturday morning, or no, wait a minute. Let me back up just a little bit. Let me back up just a tad. The oven deal happened on Wednesday, I think. So Thursday night, we get home from work, and Jane says, I don't think our refrigerator's working. I'm like, you are kidding me, man. What's the chances of the range going out 2 days prior to the refrigerator going out? But guess what? The refrigerator went out. So she tries calling our sales rep, and we'll just call her Betty Lou for the sake of this conversation. So she calls Betty Lou, and she's wanting to add a refrigerator to our order. So she calls, she's on the phone, she leaves her a message. We don't hear back from her. About 4 hours later, we call back, leave another message. We don't hear back from her. This was done on a Friday of last week. So Saturday morning, I got up out of bed and went to Lowe's, and I was looking for a range and a microwave. I didn't know I was looking for a range and a microwave. I went to look for a refrigerator. So they happened to have a refrigerator that she liked, the same one she was going to order from this other place. And make a long story short, I said, okay, the sales guys up there at Lowe's, his name was Fred, and Fred says, I said, Fred, I got to bring my wife back, take a look at this, and make sure it's the one she wants. Cool, man. So we go back up there. So we're writing the paperwork up on this refrigerator, and all of a sudden I get the brainstorm, well, I wonder if they got the range she wants. Well, guess what? They did have the range she wanted, and they had the microwave she wanted. And Jane, my wife, she's like, I'm not going to call that sales lady at the other place and tell her that we're canceling that order. And I'm like, why not? She says, I'm just not going to do it. I said, well, I will. I said, we called her twice. And here's the moral of this story. And this is the takeaway that I want you guys to leave today with when it comes to selling and how important follow-up is. We called twice, about 4.5 hours apart, and no phone call. Saturday at probably 2 p.m., give or take a little bit. I don't remember the exact time. Still no phone call. So at this point, it's been over 24 hours with no phone call back. So I thought, okay, I'll just shoot the lady an email from the other place and tell her we don't want the products. We've made other arrangements. Well, 5 minutes after I sent that email, the phone rings. And it's our sales rep from the other location. She says, I just got your email. She says, was something wrong? What happened? So I explained to her, I said, well, Betty Lou, we called you twice yesterday and didn't get a phone call back. It's now Saturday, at 2 o'clock, and we still haven't got a phone call back. And you know what her excuse was? And it's a halfway legitimate excuse to a certain extent. And that's what I want your all's opinion on. I want your opinion on this. If I did the right thing by switching and ordering from somebody else, and I didn't order from somebody else just because I was going to get the products 7 days sooner, I was frustrated because she hadn't followed up. But her excuse was this. Wayne, I've been off with surgery for 30 days. I had 75 phone messages. I still haven't got to your phone message. I didn't know you had called. First of all, why isn't some of her colleagues helping her? If she's off for 30 days, why isn't some of her colleagues helping her? That's the main part of that I don't understand. What's your take on that? Is that a legitimate excuse? Let me know what you think. 502-550-8307. Send me a text. Let me know. 502-550-8307. Was that a legitimate excuse? I've got sympathy for her that she had surgery and she was off 30 days. But I'm like, Betty Lou, why'd you respond to the email so fast? She says, well, because I see those right away and I just haven't been through the others. Hold on to that thought for a minute. We need to take a break. Turf Time's 10:28 Eastern Standard Time.
Hey, landscape pros, are you tired of digging through rocks and roots and breaking shovels in the process? Then it's time you checked out the GeoRipper 616. It's a landscaper's dream with the Makita 6 Series 2-cycle engine producing over 4 horsepower of raw performance. The 616 digs deep in up to 16 inches of the toughest soils. Lighting, landscape, and irrigation contractors already love this improved lightweight trencher with its ability to get in and get out faster, easier, and with less ground disturbance. And you will too. This redesigned GeoRipper 616 comes with 2 heavy-duty digging chains and a whole mess of helpful extras. To learn more about the GeoRipper and how it can help you out in the field, visit georipper.com today.
You know, as we sit here and we talk about this scenario, it's still kind of sinking in a little bit. But in the meantime, let's get a little Turfs Up Radio news here real quick.
For Green Industry News, this is The Turn. Live from the Turfs Up Radio studios in Louisville, Kentucky, with coverage across the country and across the street. Also across the room. Live from the Turfs Up Radio news desk, I'm Steve Anthony. In the news, H-1B, H-2B visas. With millions of Americans unemployed, the Trump administration argues we don't need to let in more foreign workers. That was the thinking behind a temporary ban Trump issued back in June on certain types of work visas for skilled tech workers, students on cultural exchanges, seasonal workers in landscaping and hospitality, and more. But a federal judge in California said Thursday that the president had likely exceeded his authority. Back in June, the Trump administration said the point of restricting these visas was to give American workers the first shot at any open jobs. So the president temporarily banned new H-1B visas for tech workers and H-2B visas for certain seasonal workers. Daniel Griswold, a senior research fellow at the think tank Mercatus Center, said the H-1B visas tend to go to people in the information technology and high-tech computer-type jobs, and their unemployment rate has remained low. Groups including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Retail Federation and others covering hundreds of thousands of businesses got together to sue. These restrictions also apply to many H-2B visas, which can be used to bring people in for seasonal construction, hospitality, and landscaping jobs. In the last several years, we're probably close to at least a decade, Almost half of all users of the program come from the landscape industry, said Andrew Bray with the National Association of Landscape Professionals. He said his industry did try to hire people laid off or furloughed due to the pandemic, but often their jobs went unfulfilled. I'm Steve Anthony for Turf's Up Radio News. Now, with your Turf's Up Radio Sports Report, here's Ryan Breda.
Hello, Turf's Up Radio listeners. This is Ryan Breda giving you today's sports report. Rafael Nadal tied Roger Federer with 20 Grand Slam titles by producing a nearly perfect performance against Novak Djokovic in the French Open final on Sunday. Now, back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Ryan. Now let's turn to your weather across the nation. Here's Turf's Up Radio's own meteorologist, Abby Lancia.
Hello, everyone. This is Abby Lancia with Turf's Up Radio reporting your national weather forecast. Today is Monday, October 12th, 2020. We have a cold front cutting through the Great Lakes region that will bring some rain and thunderstorms to this area. Chicago coming in at 67 degrees and 65 degrees in Minneapolis today. We're going to be seeing lots of rain across the East Coast due to the remnants of Hurricane Delta in parts of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, all the way down to the Carolinas. We'll also be seeing a chance of thunderstorms in southern Florida, Miami, 89 degrees today. It looks like we also have a chance of rain today in the Northwest and parts of Washington and Oregon. Seeing some sunny weather everywhere else. 82 degrees in Dallas, 76 in Denver, and 86 degrees in Sacramento. And that is it for today, everyone. This is Abby Lancia with Turf's Up Radio, your industry, your station. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you, Abby. That's it for the latest in green industry news, weather, and sports. To hear more and get the daily updates sent to your phone, be sure to download the Turn podcast on your mobile device. That's Turn for Turf's Up Radio News. For Turf's Up Radio, I'm Steve Anthony for the Turn.
Getting back to my story on that sales and why it was so important, and she was making an excuse that she had been out, and I get that we all have times when we can't follow up, but how do you have 75 phone calls to make up? I told her, I said, this is just some free, friendly advice, man. And this is honestly something that I think is very important, for you as well. When you come back in during the day, hopefully you don't have 75 voicemails to deal with, but regardless of the number, a quick fun fact on something that we found worked very well. Instead of, if you got 10 phone calls, let's say, let's don't go back to number 10 and start with 10. That's what I used to do. When I was out, when it was just me and some help or whatnot, and, you couldn't answer your phone. God, by then we didn't even have cell phones, quite honestly, when we first started. So you came back in and you had a recorder that you had to get your messages off of. But regardless of what type of device you're using, whether it's a cell phone or whatnot, if you've got multiple messages, start at the most recent message. And that's what I was told her. I said, don't try to catch up from 75 down. And don't you try to catch up from 10 or 15 down, because the person that called you 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago, they've probably continued calling somebody else and got somebody. Your best chance of success with that phone call is going to be hooking up with the person that called you most recent. They might still be waiting. And I think that's the takeaway from that particular sales story that I think is important for every one of us, me included, to know that don't start at the back of the list. Start at the front of the list and make those phone calls. And maybe you're already doing that. But if you're not, try it. And I think you'll have much better success. Because in this particular case, and it's happened to every one of us, and that's what I told my wife, Jane, when we were talking about this. She says, I can't believe you're going to do that. I said, it happens to us sometimes when we don't follow up fast enough. Has it ever happened to you? You ever followed back up with somebody, or they've got back with you and said, hey, I've already hired somebody else? In the sales game, and there's nothing about it that's a game, but in the sales game, it's all about follow-up. Now, there's times I know you're sitting there thinking, no, Wayne, I follow up religiously, and I get told all the time that, hey, I'm still waiting for another proposal to come in. We all hear that. I agree with you. But don't let the slowness be on your end when it comes to the follow-up, because it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you leads. It's going to cost you opportunities. And as the song goes, you got one chance, one opportunity. Don't blow it. I don't know if that's really where she was at, if she was still trying to really catch up on those 75 calls, or if in her mind she thought, oh, God, maybe they're canceling. I'm not calling anyway. Who knows what the thought process is? I'm going to play Judge Judy on that and say, don't tell me what somebody else thought. So I don't know what she was thinking, but I know what I was thinking, and you know what you're thinking in those scenarios. Take the time to follow up. Otherwise, it costs you thousands of dollars in the long haul by not following up with somebody. Do you have a procedure in place? Do you have a policy in place just for you, even if it's just you? Do you have a policy that says, hey, Wayne, you need to follow up with everybody within X number of whatever it is? You fill it in. 2 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours. If not, you need to think about it. You need to think about implementing something that is better than I'll call back when I want to call back. I'm still not quite over it, because, when we all work very hard. You do, I do. We spend money to generate the lead or that call coming in to us. And, when that phone does ring, take the time to do the right thing. And what the right thing is, man, is simply taking care of business. Bachman Turner Overdrive will tell us all about it. You know, this song reminds me a whole lot of what my dad used to tell me all the time about selling. And, he said, selling's really not hard. People make selling hard. They really do. When it comes down to it, just remember this, follow-up is very, very important. I know it sounds simple, and you're saying, man, I understand that, Wayne. But do you really understand how important follow-up is? Just remember, sales don't just happen. And there's a lot of statistics to that. But, something I picked up, I was doing a seminar one time, and there was a gentleman in front of me speaking about selling. And what he was talking about was simply how a lot of times in our industry, in the green industry, we'll take the time to go out and look at the property, send the proposal, get the proposal out to somebody, but we don't follow up. And I agree with that 100%. And he said 80% of sales are made after the fifth contact, but only 10% of salespeople will follow up more than 2 times. Now let's think about that a second. If 80% of sales are made after the fifth contact, 80% of sales are made after the fifth contact, but only 10% of salespeople call more than twice. Think of that, man. That means, now, let's just say those percentages are even halfway close to right. That means 10% of the salespeople are making 80% of the sales by doing nothing other than what you should be doing, and that's following up. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to talk about we sold it right, we do the work, and now the client doesn't pay. What do you do?
Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. The Drive Home. The Drive Home with Matt the Grass Factor Martin. Tune in Monday through Friday to take your turf management program to the next level. Only on Turf's Up Radio. Your industry, your station.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world, no one rocks like Turf's Up Radio. Turf's Up Radio, your industry, your station.
Hey Turf's Up Radio fans, do you know what time it is? That's right, it's Turf's Up Radio time. Now you can hear the latest updates in green industry news, services and technology. Learn about new products all while enjoying the best music. If you don't believe me, then ask my good friend Alexa. Just say launch Turf's Up Radio.
Hey Turf's Up Radio fans, do you know what time it is? That's right, it's time for Turf's Up Radio. Now you can catch us streaming live 24/7 with pro talk, pro tips, and pro interviews. Simply visit turfsupradio.com.
You're listening to Turf's Up Radio, the only radio station of its kind dedicated to the green industry. Now you can even ask Alexa to tune you in when you're home.
That's right, Turf's Up Radio. Turf's Up Radio, your industry, your station. We're here to help your company be more successful, more profitable. Throw in some entertainment and a little good music, and hey, man, there it is. It's an A for the day. So let's look at that for a minute before we wrap the show up today, because, it amazes me, and this was a situation just last week we had with a customer of clients that don't want to pay after the work's already been completed. Do you ever have it happen to you? Probably so. If you've done enough work or you've serviced enough customers, sooner or later somebody's not going to want to pay. But what we got to look at first, when we're sitting back thinking, well, why haven't they paid? The first and most important thing to look at is, have they been billed for the services that were provided? Because it's crazy how many companies aren't efficient at billing. Your billing efficiency should be number one. And it happens to the best of us sometimes where something gets by where it's not invoiced on time. Happens to me, it happens to you, it happens to all of us. Occasionally something's going to happen. But how do we keep it from happening? And we're not going to get into that a whole lot today, but the reality of it is there's things we can implement, there's software we can use, but occasionally one's still going to slip by. So if they don't pay, let's make sure they've been invoiced. But the reality of it is, how many excuses don't you hear and don't I hear and don't we all hear of why they haven't paid? You know, let's take into account just a situation that happened just with us last week. I mean, it could be you, it could be anybody. But, you know, we renovated this lawn. We seeded it. We slit seeded it, power seeded it last about 2 weeks ago. It should have been paid by now. It should have been paid. It should have been paid upon completion, in theory, right? Or maybe in reality, if that's how you have yours set up. You know, we generally get, you know, half up front and then bill the half upon completion. You know, but they've always got an excuse on why they haven't paid. Well, I want to make sure the grass is going to grow, or I want to make sure the plants are going to live, or I want to fill in the blank on why they don't pay us. We've all heard a million excuses on why they don't pay. But I guarantee you, how you think Ford Motor Company or your mortgage company for your home or Sheffield or your bank or whatever, if you just call them up and say, well, my truck's not running, so I'm not going to make a payment, or my roof's got a hole in it, I'm not going to make my payment. Why do we tolerate that as an industry? You do not have to tolerate that. But what do you have in place to not have to tolerate it? That's what you got to ask yourself. You know, what are they really saying by not paying you? Well, in my opinion, I think what they're really saying is, well, we don't trust that you'll come back and make this right if my yard doesn't come in, or, you know, if this plant dies, I'm not sure you're going to come back and replace it, or, you know, whatever their excuse is. It's really becomes a trust issue. And, you know, Daniel, my son who does the pump station, you know, he brought up a really good point on this the other day. And he said it's kind of like, you know, both people have power. The seller and the buyer have power. But once we do the work as an industry, we relinquish our power. So if you want some type of guaranteed income on that job, get something up front. Get part of it up front. Because, you know, if you look at it in a retail situation, it's a balance of power. Let's say you're going to buy a pair of shoes or buy a pizza, or, you know, if you go to buy a new truck. When you decide you want to buy whatever it is you're going to buy as a consumer in a retail market, you buy it, it's paid for. If it's not paid for, it's financed. And if it's financed, then and you don't pay it, then they come get it. But in our industry, we can't go get it. We can't take the mulch up. We can't go pull the plants out of the ground. We can't go pull the grass out of the ground. So what are you doing? Or ask yourself this question: how do you fix it? How do you fix it for yourself? You know, I think one way you can fix it is have it stated in your proposal, and this is a really good idea. This is something Kyle shared with me with ours. He handles the landscaping side of our business. You know, he says, well, from a landscaping perspective, what we do, it says, our balance is due at the time of completion. Otherwise, there is no plant warranty, and the warranty's void. Now, are we going to necessarily enforce that? Probably not, but we could. So that's the incentive for that balance of power for that customer to pay when that invoice is sent, you know, or when we're there. If they want to pay that balance, they can certainly call in our office. We don't want our crews running around with all kinds of checks in the truck or running cards and whatnot. You know, based on your company size, you can have different payment methodologies set up that maybe you get paid after each job. But the point is to have something set up within your company that allows you to get paid upon completion. First thing we can look at is, hiring a better client in the first place. We can't be everything to everybody. So let's look at hiring a better client. Let's vet our customers a little bit better. Just because the phone rings doesn't mean we necessarily want to have that client. And I think we need to learn by example. And what I mean by that is, quite simply, you've probably had a customer that hasn't paid you on time. I'd be willing to bet, right? I can see you shaking your head. Yeah, I got something like that, Once you get that money collected, what are you doing different with that customer? Are you letting them to stay in that same cycle? If we learn as a company that, hey, Miss Smith is going to be a slow pay or a no pay, and God, that's a funny story I'll try to bring up here if I got time. But, it's shame on them the first time. But if you bring them back in as a customer and they don't pay you the second time, then it's shame on you. Because you knew their history. You knew they were slow pay or no pay. And just because they finally caught up doesn't mean they come back in with that same flexibility, And it doesn't mean you're never going to work for them again, but just set it up as a prepay account. If they're not paid, again, it goes back to that balance of power. What can you do to create the balance of power? And the power being, hey, when that service is provided, that needs to be paid. Well, if they've demonstrated that they're not going to pay you on time, then that trust has to be re-earned. And maybe it's never re-earned. And that's okay too. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, it's probably not right. But Wayne, y'all do such a great job. I want y'all to take care of my yard. I won't be late again. Well, fine, let's do it on a prepay basis. Then guess what? They're not late. And that balance of power is there. You're not asking somebody to do anything differently than if they go out to eat, if they go buy a pair of shoes, if they go buy a car, if they go buy a house. Hey, you decide what you want, you pay for it. It balances out the power. And something else that I want to touch on, and this is going to be a topic of discussion for one of my shows, is we need to utilize service agreements. Within your company, I am a firm believer, and there's a million reasons why, that service agreements make really good sense. Now, let's just go ahead and throw it out there and say, I understand and you understand that just because you're utilizing a service agreement does not mean that you're guaranteed payment. But what it does mean is you've got a tool to go after your payment. And that's where I think a lot of times we fall short as a company. That's where I fell short with my company for a few years, is we did not have service agreements in place. And like I said, we're going to talk about that in another show, but the reality of it is, make sure you get paid for the work that you do. You've earned it. Go get it and collect it. It's just that simple. Don't worry about, because here's what I used to do, and I'll wrap this up. I used to always think, man, I'm going to lose that customer. Have you ever asked that question to yourself? Man, I'm going to lose that customer if I call them and ask them to pay me. What are you losing? You're not losing anything. Take a short break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Turf's Up Radio, the only radio station of its kind dedicated to the green industry. Now you can even ask Alexa to tune you in when you're home.
Hey Green Industry Pros, Turf's Up Radio is celebrating what a great first year we had and wants to give you $100 just for being involved. That's right, all you have to do is visit turfsupradio.com/shout out for 100 and follow a few easy steps. When you hear your name live on the radio, we're going to send you a crisp $100 bill. So be sure to visit turfsupradio.com/shout out for 100 to claim your cash. And remember, Turf's Up Radio, your industry, your station.
Hey, Turf's Up Radio fans, keep missing industry events but want to stay up to date on the action? Then simply download the Road Fuel Podcast by Turf's Up Radio on your mobile device. You'll hear everything you missed, including great interviews with showgoers and vendors keeping you in the know. That's the Road Fuel Podcast by Turf's Up Radio, or simply visit turfsupradio.com/roadfuel.
You know, as we wrap today's show up, you know, I guess a few things I want you to leave here today with. One is, you know, just simply the fun fact. Remember the fun fact. When are you getting fuel and how much money that can cost your company? Follow up. Be sure to follow up on those sales, guys. Most of your competitors aren't going to do it. And when you do it, seize the moment. Make the sell. You got one chance, one opportunity. If you want your company to be more successful, more profitable, we got to take care of the little things. Let's take care of the little things, and the big things take care of themselves. And last but not least, hey, you did the work. Get paid for it. If you got to put a client in collections to get it, we're going to talk about that probably Wednesday. I'll follow up a little bit with that because didn't have enough time to get into it today. But, hey, it's your money. You earned it. You deserve it. It's your profit dollars that you're leaving out there on the table. There's a lot of good shows here on Turf's Up Radio. Take the time to listen. You know, we got Matt Martin on your drive home at 4 o'clock. Great guy. Heckabus with his nightcap. You know, we got Eric Jones on in the morning at 7. You know, if you guys like get up early and turn the radio on, listen a little bit. Eric, Darren with the carpool. You know, if you like what you hear, you want more of it, simply go to your favorite place you like to get your podcast. Type in Profit Time. Download it. You'll get your notifications when we upload anything new. You can also find us, you know, on YouTube, any of the social medias. There's a ton of information out there, a ton of knowledge that we share to help you make your company more successful and more profitable. And remember, profit is not a dirty word. We'll see you Wednesday.